Before we get started and tell you anything about anything, got to give you a disclaimer. So we're talking about social media, and if you use the tips and tricks that we discussed in this presentation, you might basically just get tired of like how well you're doing and how famous or successful your business is. And you're going to have lots of trolls and bad unsolicited advice, and your comment sections are going to be terrible. Just pay attention. That was a lot to read. I didn't think about reading it when I typed it out. But yeah, so cents per mile. It's a podcast. We're on it. Right? Cool. And this is Charles. And I am Paul. And today we're talking about, what are we talking about today?
Social media, trucking, from isolation to inspiration.
Yep. From the bottom to the top. That's how we read it. Cool. So we're going to go through drivers and carriers. So if you're a driver, how you can leverage your social media, how you should go about it to essentially like build a following, whether you just want to be an influencer and super cool, or whether you want to do it to grow your network, to have access to like more freight and that kind of stuff.
Or be the sidekick to the influencer.
Yeah, except for I wasn't a driver. I just said weird stuff. That's how I got here. And then carriers. Carriers.
Yeah.
You need help. And we're here to help. So, a lot of times when I hear drivers, they're like, "Oh, I don't post on social media."
You should.
It's 2025. You're on there. You have a Facebook. So, cool. Yeah.
The road is a lonely place, and it's a great way to find the people that are going to connect with you. You're stuck behind a windshield. What better way to connect with the world and what's going on than using social media? So drivers are using it to connect with fellow drivers and share their opinions.
And yeah, like I said earlier, you can actually leverage your network to get freight, to find jobs. Like essentially anyone that you would want to talk to get anything done, they're going to be there. They also have social media. You can find them on a personal level, on a professional level, and you can make friends. Sometimes you can find out some interesting stuff about people that you can, the people, they don't want everybody to know, but you know it. And then post for the job that you want and not the job that you have. So if you want a better job, post like you are doing that better job. Because also anyone who's going to hire you also has social media. And, this day and age, they actually try to look you up, most HR people, to see what kind of stuff you're posting. Because that's reflective of, possibly how professional you are. It also, if you post a lot, could show your skills, So if you, are posting terrible things, they're going to be like, oh, maybe we don't want that person.
Well, and everyone's using it nowadays. Everyone's using social media to scout out their next prospect for business, their next partnership, someone that they're bringing on. I mean, we were a fluke in the system. They let us through the cracks, but that doesn't always happen.
There was a lot of work involved. But, so because it's one of those things, too, like everybody uses ads to find an audience on social media. Like businesses, every time you're on social media, it's add this, add that. You got to remember, you as a user are the people that they are looking for, that they're actively paying money to attract. So you can also find them if you need something. All right, what not to do?
Don't post something that you would get fired for. I mean, it's solid advice. If you're posting it, assume that your employer is going to see it. And if you think they'll fire you, probably not do that.
Yeah, I mean, regardless how you feel about the whole cancel culture argument or whatever, but it's the idea that if you post something terrible or something that your HR department doesn't like, whatever it is, they'll see it. Someone can take it, send it to them, but also just don't post it in the first place, and also maybe just don't be an asshole. Can I say that?
Well, you did already, so
Touché.
We passed that one.
All right, forward progress. Yeah.
There can be a fine line between edgy, controversial, or cringy content. You see it out there. You guys have social media. If you're sitting in this room and you don't have one, you should have one. You guys have probably scrolled through something that you're just like, a little too edgy, a little too cringy. You want to be aware of your audience. You want to be aware of the people that are viewing your content or that you intend to view your content. You're building that content out for them. So if you think it might push that line, might want to consider how better approach the situation.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a big difference between like a hot take about something, like let's say like, hey, tariffs are a bad idea, or tariffs are good, even though that is a really hot take. Charles.
Well, I'll use an example. I argued on behalf of non-competes. It's a lot of people are like, oh, boo, non-competes. I actually took the other side of that from the business perspective of it. It was not the popular opinion in the room, but nonetheless, someone needed to hear that perspective. There's ways to approach it without turning away half your audience.
Yeah, and but then also like, if you're just gonna post like a skull with an eagle and a truck, and you're gonna say something like badass mofo or something like that, people are just gonna be like, what is that? Why are you posting that? Yeah.
Well, you got to know your audience. You got to know when to stop. You need to know what they like and know how to pick it up and put it out there in a way that they're going to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
You know your audience. You're posting content. That's how you got the audience, whether it's 100 followers or 100,000 followers. They follow you for a reason. So remember that and then tailor that content to that. You can be authentic and evolve and change, but know your audience.
Right. So like a good example on our podcast, we do push the limits a little bit. And so it's one of those things where our whole thing is we love the transportation industry. We love truck drivers. We love all of it, because if it wasn't for the transportation industry, there wouldn't be anything.
Yeah.
But it's the idea that like there are parts about it that are terrible.
Lots of parts.
And that's where it comes down to the balance is everything. Because while it's easy to just trash all of it and talk about the negatives, you have to talk about why you need to talk about the negatives. So like talking about driver pay, like you need to acknowledge why driver pay is the way it is, also like why it's terrible, why it needs to get fixed, and potential solutions.
Well, and it goes a little deeper than that. How many times you've been scrolling on social media and someone's like, oh, this company's horrible, or this sucks, or this is just absolutely terrible. Well, that gives no context to the situation. Share the context, share the actual experience, put some detail in it. You're going to garner engagement off that because you elaborated on it rather than the vague, this sucks. Listen, we can all find something that's terrible out there. Elaborate into it, share it, and you're going to wind up attracting people that are agreeing with that, or sometimes people that don't.
Mm-hmm. All right, so here's what to do, right? So consistency is key. There's a lot of people you see on social media, and you're like, why do so many people like this? And the fact of the matter is that they actually don't, but that person has posted enough times that they've convinced the algorithm by the number of likes that they've gotten simply by just being available when people open their phones, that people like it. So that's literally it. Like the number one thing above all else, you could post the sickest post ever, right? But you only post once a month, you're never gonna grow. You could post the most mid content like 3 times a day or specified for whatever algorithm you're on, and you're just gonna grow. It's gonna happen. It's inevitable.
Like it or not, you're a special snowflake.
true.
Pose yourself as an expert, consistently highlight your knowledge and what you know. At the end of the day, you're posting about you, your experiences, your opinions. That audience that follows you, those people chose to follow you, like I said earlier. So stay consistent with that. You can evolve and push your limits, and you're going to change. We all do. Hopefully you do. If you don't, then, yeah, we should talk afterwards. There's self-help groups for that stuff.
Therapy's great.
You want to be authentic, and you want to put yourself out there. No one's going on social media to look at John Doe and say, oh, it's just like this person and this person. Like, you're each unique. I have several of you in this room or more that I follow. I look forward to your content because it's different than the next person and the one after. So be different. Don't be scared to put yourself out there. Heck, the first time you put me on camera, I forgot to blink for like 30 minutes. I looked like a serial killer.
My name is Charles Gracie.
Yeah, it was terrible. I rewatched it, and I grew from it. But I was able to share that experience with others, so others didn't do it, and it was something funny to watch later down the line.
Yeah, and I mean, it is your perspective. Like, that's it. It's your perspective on whatever it is. That's why you can have multiple people who have the same feelings, but they're all going to have a slightly different take because they have different backgrounds, different experiences, different needs. So, like, don't copy people. Just do the same thing, but the way that you would do it. Because also, that's how you're going to get burnt out.
Yeah.
If you're trying to constantly replicate things and not putting parts of yourself into it, you're going to have to keep just making stuff up forever, and that is exhausting in how a lot, backwards. Yeah, so also everybody and their mom is on the internet now, so why should they listen to you, right? There's so many people yelling. It's like being out there on the floor. You could just talk like this, and it's like, you know, but you have to give them some kind of value, or you have to give them just like a reason. Entertain them. You don't even have to say anything important. Just like be funny or like dramatic or something that really pulls them in that nobody else is providing them.
It's whatever matters to you. You got to have fun with this too. You're going to be the one that's consistently posting, so you got to enjoy what you're putting out there. If you actually hate what you're posting, there's nothing worse than trying to replicate that over and over again. I mean, successfully on social media, I found that you got to post 2-3 times a day. If I'm putting stuff out there I don't believe, that's terrible. That does not sound like fun. I'm probably not going to do it, and then the algorithm's going to knock me down for lack of consistency. You only lose if you forfeit. Trial and error is the name of the game. It's true. It took me a while to figure out what was going to be my path on social media. I tried just the professional, like corporate stuff. When I was running a company, I was sitting there like, oh, just salesy stuff. Listen, everyone's selling on there. People don't want to see it. You have to find a blend. You have to figure out what the voice is going to be, and then you have to find the audience that supports that voice. And you're probably going to fall a couple times on the way, and it's okay. No one came out the womb an expert on social media. And if they did, I really need to talk to that person.
Well, I also think that we're at a weird transition. I think that actually will be the case. That will be our generation's version.
Coming
of
out
like,
with your Facebook
hey,
account?
Can you help me set the timer on the VCR? You know, but yeah, no, and that's the thing is like, so even our podcast, like if you go back and watch the first couple episodes, you want to talk about awful. Yeah. There's a lot of work that went into developing it, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't work.
Well, let's pause on that for a second.
Oh, God.
Let's trauma bond with the audience.
All right, that's better than making
So first season, cents per mile. We're on what season now?
3.
3.
About to do
First season, cents per mile was an experiment. We didn't get the engagement we thought we were going to get. We paused. Instead of launching season 2, we paused for almost, a year?
No, it was like 4 months.
No, it felt like way longer.
Felt like longer.
So 4 months, if he's right. We need to fact check that. But people kept reaching out. We didn't think audience was picking up what we were putting down, and people kept reaching out, asking when the next episode, when the next season, asking for more. We were kind of proud about that moment. People kept asking. And it took a little bit of time, and we revisited several structures of the show. But if you look at the show, it's evolved. Each season, it changes a little bit, and that comes back to you guys and the feedback we get from our audience, and then the things that we like or don't like. There's some things that you guys loved, like Under the Truck. We had a segment called Under the Truck. He absolutely hated it. Josh and I loved it because we got to come up with some off-the-wall topic and throw Paul under the truck, and he had to improvise and do some terrible things. Like at one point, what did we have you sing a song about? You were like pro speed limiters or something?
It was a dating app for truck drivers, and they would just put on stock music and then make me try to like, they'd be like, you're going to try and pitch this to the audience. Also, here's the music. I wouldn't have heard the music, and I would have just gotten the subject right before. And sometimes it got a little weird, and it was uncomfortable.
A lot of times it got weird.
Yeah, it was a weird line to toe between like edgy and cringy and all of that, like earlier. Now, the one thing for drivers, while we're still in the driver section, a big thing is safety, right? So if you're a driver and you're listening to this, we got to talk about safety because obviously everybody loves talking about safety, like even when they call, right? It's the best phone calls. And if we have to explain this, you should, If we have to explain this, you should probably put your flip-flops back on and go get your truck out of the fuel island. Just don't be an idiot. It's not that hard.
I mean, there's a little bit that goes into that, though. Like, I've seen some people do some stuff that they just didn't realize, like, have a backdrop with some confidential information on the whiteboard from their employer, and then they're filming a selfie video. I mean, we all know that one person.
That's not safe. That's just like some legal stuff. But like maybe don't like film yourself in selfie mode, obviously clearly with your hand rolling down the road.
And certainly don't do it with your foot up on the dash, trying to get that perfect angle while you're going 65 miles down the road. It's just not a good idea, and no one wants to see you crash on
And
video.
like I said, just don't be stupid. But it turns out those are actually real videos.
Yeah.
So all right, now carriers, this is the fun part.
Yes.
All right, this is really what it's about. Sweet. Drivers are people. So if you're a carrier, that's the thing. Drivers are people. And if that's new to you, Charles does offer consulting services, and we would love to help you out.
Yeah, you know what, though? What gets me on that one is we talk about social media. The whole premise is to put yourself out there. Carriers, you're no different. You're putting yourself out there. You're looking for that intended audience. That audience is drivers. I don't know, like talk to them like people, like they do at the trade shows. Instead, they're listing respect as a job perk, or like we treat you like family. You have a great saying for that. What is it, like not the family that comes around once a year and collects money from you?
Oh, yeah, we're going to treat you like family. That typically at most companies does actually mean you are going to owe us money and spend the holidays with us.
Yeah.
Right? That's usually what most companies mean. Went one ahead. So it seems like common sense, but different people do different things. Focus less on trends of what platforms to use because drivers are everywhere. Drivers are not just on Facebook. They are on TikTok. They are on Instagram. They are
Discord.
on Discord, yep. I even know a lady that does a lot of stuff on Pinterest.
Yeah.
So, they're everywhere. Don't just stick to like whatever somebody who's doing stuff that's like from 10 years ago is doing.
Well, and the rules change here. I think that's where people get lost in the translation of this. When you're the person posting the content as an individual, you get to pick where you post it. But when you're a carrier and you're going after the intended audience, drivers, you got to be everywhere. And you got to be everywhere well. Otherwise, you suck everywhere, and no one's going to look at your stuff. And then all of a sudden, we're using some big box name company. We treat you like family cliches.
Yep. And so the other thing, too, is everyone has a different reason for getting behind the wheel. So as a carrier, if you paint a picture of a specific ideal driver, if you paint and create an image of a driver that you want, like as a person, inadvertently or on purpose, you've lost so many people. There is such a diverse group of people who drive trucks. And so to do that, to go with that classic, like you want to look like Chris Christopherson, Smokey and the Bandit, like Snowman kind of stuff, like that doesn't necessarily fit the whole demographic.
For a small sliver of the intended audience, it might, but
It does, but like
the other 98.9%,
Right.
you probably lost them.
Yeah, and so that's one thing to do. What's the next one? Ew.
If you do not post, you do not exist in the eyes of the internet. Well, I mean, I agree and disagree with this one. You still exist. If you're a carrier, you want to be out there. If you're a business owner, you want to be out there because you're going to be in the reviews. And if you don't put anything out there, that's what they're going to see. And you better hope you went on the reviews, because if you didn't, well, it's not going to be a good time.
Well, I mean, yeah, that is true. Like, if you are a carrier, one thing you should probably do that you probably haven't
Google
done-
yourself.
Yeah, or no, even better, YouTube yourself. Like, go YouTube any carrier, and I almost guarantee you there's going to be a driver review that pops up before whatever like fun ad they made.
But you know what happens when you do post and when you're putting stuff out there on multiple platforms? You start to see that rise in the rankings, and your drivers, your intended audience, are going to see that first. So if you're leaving yourself subject to only your reviews, and sometimes you might get that angry person that had a bad day that left all the time in the world to give you the worst review ever. No one takes the time to leave great ones unless you send them like multiple email campaigns nowadays. Well, then, you did it to yourself. So again, consistency, posting, using multiple platforms, and letting them judge for themselves. Because how many people drive in this room and look up where they're going to work online before they go work there? Hell, I'd do it before a job application.
Cool story.
Is it?
That's sarcasm. All right, sweet. You don't consume your post, your audience does. All right, cool. This is fun. Driver Appreciation Week. Let's start there. Right?
Barbecues.
Okay, cool. This is my favorite. All right, so I've done a lot of, I was a recruiter and then I started my own video company, specifically making ads for trucking companies with better messaging, double the fleet size of the carrier I worked at, so people started asking me to do it, so I started my own company. Right, and all it takes is just being genuine and being self-aware and focusing on who you're trying to advertise to, not making yourself look cool. Right? So you can post all day that like you made cheeseburgers for people out in, like your warehouse or whatever. But the thing is, everybody knows your drivers are paid per mile, right? And so if they're coming in to get those cheeseburgers, that's an expensive cheeseburger when you compare the time off of the road, the time the truck isn't moving, like that's for you. Like, and so,
Well,
like,
that's to give you content so you can post it, and then your drivers are all making fun of you because you're posting about the barbecue or the cheeseburgers that they didn't get.
right, or
And
like
that the
somebody,
dispatch office was eating, or outside of that, maybe the shop, and someone snapped a photo and assumed it was drivers.
or one of my favorite stories that we've actually covered was there was this company that made the news. They were a trucking company, and they built a 24-hour gym inside of their terminal. The news came out, did a story on it. There were no drivers in that gym.
Dispatch loved it, though.
Yeah, everyone that they interviewed was an office employee, but their whole thing was like, yeah, we built this so our drivers could stay healthy because drivers live an average of 16 years less than the average American, which is true, absolutely. And there are some people doing some cool stuff about that. But it's like every person, like in their lower third was like dispatcher, accountant.
Mechanic.
Like,
The guy that took forever to fix your truck, he was probably in the gym.
or your paycheck. All right. And you have a real life audience. You do if you're a carrier. Ask your drivers what they like about your company and why they haven't quit yet. Turnover is an issue in the industry, probably for a lot of reasons that we don't have time to get into.
You don't have enough
You don't
time.
want to do that unless you got like 3.5 hours. And and you like
That's it?
You like the sound of my voice.
And we're going to go back in time like 40, 50 years.
You're right.
But one of the cool things I learned from you on that is the interview stuff. You go into video stuff and you always discredit how much that means in this. But there was a time we were interviewing. I was on site. It was Paul, Josh, and myself. We were on site videoing for a carrier. And I found out that things don't necessarily align. What carriers think their winning points are doesn't necessarily translate to the drivers the same. Very rarely does it happen. Luckily for us, we were at a place where it did. And it kind of shocked them, which shocked me that they were surprised that that can happen. But we were at a place where the ownership and leadership there were all telling us, this is why we win. Well, normally when these guys are interviewing drivers, and I've seen it, it never correlates to that. It's usually something else or lack of other options. But as we were talking to drivers, they were regurgitating that same stuff. And these were random drivers we were pulling. They didn't pre-select them as they were coming into the terminal. That's a win. That carrier was aligned with their messaging. But that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, so what usually happens in my experience, having done this a bunch of times, is I'll always sit down with like the executives or, the recruiting director or somebody, and I'll be like, oh, what's your main selling points? Like when you're recruiting drivers, like what's the main things that you push? Like what's in your ads? And they'll tell me, and they'll be like, oh, we got brand new 579s. I'm like, cool, everybody just got new slope noses. It's that time of year. Like, oh, we'll treat you with respect. That's not a job perk.
No, it's human decency.
Or like, you're a name and not a truck number. Or your name, not a number, but your truck has one, and that is how your dispatcher will refer to you.
And every time you call in, they're going to ask that because they don't know John Doe. They just know the truck number.
Right, but every company is different. They're all a little bit different in some way. It might be minute. Obviously, everybody's moving freight, so that's kind of, there's that part, that's the same. But if you go talk to a set of drivers, yeah, you ask them all what their favorite part about working is there, what keeps them there, why have they been there for so long? And you will always start to, if you get to about 5 drivers, you will always see a majority consistent pattern.
Not
right?
always a good one.
It's always a good one because it's the reason that they stayed. But what happens is that reason 9 times out of 10 is not what somebody up top who isn't in the truck said, oh, this is why we're cool. It's not. Ask your drivers.
Well, it's simply they fell into the trap of thinking that if they can get their message out, that that's going to attract their desired audience. But what they don't realize is the testament of truth is right there, the drivers that have stayed.
You're advertising corporate giving you a pizza party. Cool. Yeah.
It's a sales tool. It's not always a sales pitch. Be self-aware. Take account of the perspective of your intended audience. You're a carrier. This is how you communicate your culture, your real culture, not the one you wish you had. It's the one you have. And if you don't like it, well, then be better. It's simple. Communicate what you have. Obviously, you're going to need to be able to do that by self-auditing what you have. There's going to be areas you win. You know some of the most powerful content a carrier can put out? Where they lose, because you now control the narrative. Acknowledging where you lose allows you to have a conversation about why. So maybe it's governors. Well, maybe it's we save so much on insurance that governor is necessary, and now we can give more to our drivers in pay. Hey, let's have that conversation. I can get behind getting drivers more pay. Most drivers can too. They wish they had even more. Why does it take a speed limiter is a whole nother conversation. Thank you, insurance companies. But there's other things in those conversations that can lead you to address those landmines that a recruiter might trip up in. So by having that stuff up front in your marketing and in your communications, videos, whatever, you can now have these conversations. Drivers are going to be self-aware, and it's not an awkward conversation.
I would actually say it goes a step beyond that, because it doesn't matter how great of a carrier you are. You could be the greatest carrier ever. You could have, never mind, I'm not going to talk trash or anything. But like you could have won some kind of award about how cool of a carrier you are or whatever. But the thing is, there's things about being a truck driver that suck. And you can't fix that. You can't fix hours of service. You can't.
I mean, we could, just there's too many other people trying to not do that.
You can't fix traffic.
I mean.
You can't fix nuclear verdicts. You can't fix.
No, you totally fix those.
Yeah, either way, you get the point. There's things that you can't fix being away from home for 3 hours a day, except for maybe if you also had your salespeople buy freight that was more driver-friendly than price-friendly. Anyway, we're not going to get there. But
we're trying really hard not to go down a lot of different rabbit holes today.
But it's the idea is that by acknowledging those things like, hey, I know your job is hard. You know, like you always, like a lot of drivers will say, like people, or even people on the back end of the industry will say, drivers aren't appreciated like they used to. They don't feel appreciated. How do we appreciate drivers? Well, one, acknowledge their job is hard. Acknowledge they're the only people that aren't required that can be W-2 and not get paid overtime.
And they showed up to work.
Right.
You're talking to them. They're out there on the road. They're having an issue. One of the most important pieces of advice I could give to you as a carrier, it might not be important to you, but if they're taking the time to bring it up to you, it's important to them. So therefore, by default, it should be important to you, and if it's not, be better.
So yeah, don't just post what's cool about you, post that you understand the things that aren't cool about the job, and maybe even some things that you're like, I wish we could do this better, right? So I paraphrase this quote, ask not what your drivers can do for you, ask what you can do for your drivers. John F. Kennedy, that's kind of what he said, basically. Because if there are no drivers, there'd be no country. But the point is like, also carriers, also a lot of times when you post like, oh, we're the best, we're super cool. And it's like, if you went out there, you know how you win? You go out there and you say, hey, you know what? You're a driver, you work hard, and we're going to give you the tools that you need to be the hero of your story instead of trying to be the hero. It's not, oh, we treated you so good. It's, we're so glad we were able to help you find a better life for yourself.
Well, I just don't understand why people try to control those narratives. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. You and I put it out there. We put ourselves out there. I'll share stuff about my family, my interactions, my job, and they're not always great. Carriers, you got it easy. You're not trying to build like a social media conglomerate. You're trying to build a brand. Those drivers are out there communicating your company as a rolling billboard. And now you have the power of social media at your fingertips. Why not just have a conversation? Sit down, see where the camera takes you, have a conversation. Some of the most authentic things I've seen have just been casual. The stuff that you spend a lot of time on trying to overproduce, they never go anywhere. They seem exactly as you intended, overproduced. Sit down, whip out your cell phone. Everyone has one nowadays. If you don't, yeah, you should get one before attending this one.
All right. Trucking Transport Co. Inc., right? Okay, cool. The generic answer to this question is don't be generic.
Yeah.
Right, cool. I did check. I don't think that's like got an actual like DOT number to it. I hope not. Jesus.
If so, I apologize on
right.
Paul's behalf.
So did an interview on the podcast with a guy named Andy Pearson from a company called Liquid Death. They sell water in a can, right? And they do $300 million a year in sales. Cool. They just got valuated last year at $1.4 billion, all because of their marketing and their brand and the community that they've built. That's more than Taylor Swift's net worth, and she is the biggest superstar in pop music who ever lived.
But you know what you did there? There
What?
was a key word, community.
Yeah.
You are building a community. Online, you are exposing yourself, your culture, and what you're trying to accomplish. Your drivers are looking for that. Your intended audience is looking for that. If you do so successfully, you will have a community. There's successful ones out there.
We'll get there.
But I'm
But
excited.
before that, I know this guy's all about
This
like
guy's always
let's
trying to
build
pump
a
the
network.
brakes.
That's why he's the man, because I don't do well with making friends because I just say what's on my mind. No, but
I'm your friend, Paul.
I know. So the thing is with that, like, don't be afraid to push the limits. Don't be afraid to be disruptive. Don't be afraid to be the person who says what everybody else is thinking.
Consider the source.
If they're
There's brakes applied at times.
That's fair. Within reason, edgy, cringeworthy. But like, don't be afraid to say, talk about the problems. Don't be able, like we said earlier, don't be afraid to admit that you have problems. Everybody has problems. You need to humanize yourself. And if you're constantly just like not paying attention to anybody and you start to sound like a robot, that's going to be terrible because you got to say it like you mean it. Because if you're saying the same cliches like the one I made fun of earlier with the respect, with the name, not a number, we'll treat you like family, that's great if you do those things. Awesome. Love that. But you know who else says that? Absolutely trash companies. And so if everybody hears that from 20 companies, that saying, that cliche is going to get judged by the worst company who says it. Like, whatever that worst company is, if I hear you say that, I'm automatically going to associate it with how terrible that is, because everybody remembers the car crash, right? So if you're saying that, you're not you, you're that. So figure out a different way to say it.
Show it.
Make it uniquely you.
You're on social media. There's video. Show it. Don't just say it. Don't put it in a tagline somewhere. Just show it.
Yep. And that's the important part, is it's not karaoke. It's not okay to be monotone, and it's not okay to be tone deaf. You got to actually, you got to stay current and mindful of the current environment on the road. If you're a carrier and you're posting things and you're not acknowledging experiences that drivers are having, then like, why would they listen to you? Because you're clearly not listening to them. And who wants to work for somebody that doesn't listen to them? Those are the worst leaders out there.
How's it going, bud?
It's fine.
The story of my life.
Here is the big secret. So, like we said, when we started this, Charles had a really clever name, and I am a really good Googler, and Josh is great at video production. And they were like, start a podcast. Hell yeah. No idea what we're doing. I listened to like 3 episodes of one podcast like 5 years ago. No idea. But I built it. And Charles obviously is a guy, he's an expert on a lot of stuff. Thought leader is what some people like to say. And we
There's
were
some
like, how do we-
animosity behind that description.
No, I just hate that word. If we're thought leaders, how?
Well, it is controversial
Right.
because you describe me as the face and you as the brains, but if I'm the thought leader, then that's kind of confusing at that point.
I'm not explaining to you how puppets work. All right, cool. So the big secret is you have to know the rules to break the rules.
Yes.
Knowing how to break the rules is how you win. So what we did, because I didn't really care for podcasts, we went and looked at what all the other podcasts were doing.
You did the opposite.
And we watched a bunch of stuff on how to start a podcast, how to do a podcast. And we took all the things that we didn't like about podcasts, and we just didn't do those
Remember
parts.
how long that list was?
It was so long.
It was terrible.
But we found out where those parts are important. The parts that are important, we kept those because they're structural to having a podcast, right? Like distribution, et cetera, et cetera. But like the format, you don't have to do it a certain way. Anything like, even in your marketing, you don't have to market the way that other people market. You know, guerrilla marketing is brilliant. If you just Google that and look up some of the examples. But the idea is that you don't have to do it the way that everybody else does it. In fact,
You shouldn't.
right. And that is being disruptive is a big part of the key to success.
Constructive disruption.
Right.
I have to be the buffer here because people have gone too far and it has backfired. Constructive.
Well, it's just knowing your audience. And you also,
There's a
don't-
curve to this, though.
right, but you also don't really have to, it depends. Because if the people you're pissing off aren't people that were going to work for you anyway, or follow you or listen to you anyway, it doesn't matter. In fact, those people are going to go on to complain about you for reasons that when other people hear them will go, that actually sounds pretty cool. You know, so that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
No questions. Paul, I think you did too much.
All right.
Oh, posting, yes. So there's different scenarios with each platform you're on. What you post on Facebook isn't what you're going to post on TikTok. What you post on TikTok isn't what you're going to post on Instagram. Generally, what you'll find out is the people that are successful in 2 or 3 of those, they all have that one kryptonite platform. For me, that's Facebook. Like, I use Facebook to communicate with my distant family so my mom doesn't get mad at me. I post my family pictures up there. I'll tag people that are close friends just so they can see, like, we're all getting along. But, like, to me, personally, Facebook is dead. I use Instagram. I use TikTok. I use X. I use Discord. Those are chosen platforms for myself. I do very well on those because what I'm posting and the message I'm conveying matches with how the algorithm and the audience I've built up over the years. If I put that stuff on Facebook, I'm going to have to tag everyone in it, and then they're going to be like, hey, why are you tagging me every day? And then I'm like my dad. It's a blend. So, again, it's you. This guy is a media master with Josh where they can do a whole lot of cool video editing and that. I piss him off all the time. I get in CapCut with some pictures. I get in, very low barrier to entry platforms.
It's so dumb.
And he gets so mad.
I'll put in like 12 hours on a video, and Charles will just like
3
slap
minutes.
some stuff together on his phone for 3 minutes, and like mine will do like okay, and then his will just explode.
Yeah, I was showing him before we came in here one that had like 1.3 million engagement on it, and
But sometimes,
it took me like 3 minutes.
the opposite still happens. It's
Yeah.
it's just a lot of times. I mean, Josh has like 37,000 followers, subscribers on his YouTube channel, and I mean, you never know. He'll tell you like you don't know which video is going to do good, and a lot of times it's the one that you think is like a filler post for consistency that becomes like the one that explodes.
Yeah, the 3 of us trauma bond over this for days all the time because there'll be consistency matters. So sometimes you'll just, hey, you got something going on and you just want to put something in there to place hold. And that's the thing that takes off. But then you spent 12 hours like this guy and you made this perfect video that you think is going to be a hit and then it just flops. So it's getting to know your audience. It all comes down to your audience. But outside of that, it's a mix-in. I like to mix and diversify. So I'll have some family stuff. I might have just some words typed out with no image. Sometimes it'll be something that's encouraging engagement, like a question. Sometimes it'll be a poll. And then there's videos. Like for my audience, a lot of them seem to engage highly with me sharing my day-to-day because I have so many hats I wear. They like to see that. So I'll share some of the media stuff. I'll share some of the family stuff. And those do very well. Slap some music on it. That's the culture I've built in my channels. Where Josh, on the other hand, he has built out a how-to audience. So he does a lot of how-to video magic stuff that gets really too nerdy for me. That's why I pay people to do that stuff. And for him, those people like to tune into his stuff. And then Paul, I mean...
Well, so I actually started posting about mental health, and the more I posted about mental health, the more I stopped posting.
Yeah. Well, that's the best part. You have to engage. If you're going to make any effort to build an audience, you better be engaging. Well, you have to ask a question, or you have to put out content that engages with the audience that's going to promote a question. If you're putting out stuff and you're never getting a comment, change it up a little bit. Maybe put a direct question. Sometimes what I found successful in areas where people might not have necessarily engaged in the beginning is I'll go and answer my own question and put myself out there so they see my view and perspective, and now they want to offer theirs.
Yeah, well, that's actually that. And then sometimes you want to take it a little bit further, just push it. Like if you do have a controversial opinion, that's not an awful one, but reasonable or thought-provoking, you put that out there, people are more likely to want to put in their opinions. Or sometimes, actually, if you say something wrong, people will love to come in there and correct you. You let them correct you, but in like thanking you for them correcting you, you can actually then go in and insert something that starts a conversation from them correcting you. And so there's a lot of different ways to do it. You have to make it conversational, especially on the carrier side. Like a lot of things that we actually found that with the podcast a lot is a lot of the stuff that we post, we try to make it like, what do you think? But you don't actually just want to ask, what do you think? Because that's not going to work. It's got to be like, you have to make a statement in a way to where it's like, this is what I think. Mm-hmm. Less, what do you think, and more, this is what I think, because everybody has this need these days to like
share
make
their
their opinion known.
Yeah.
So if you make your opinion known, now I feel like I can speak.
Well, and that's one of those too, where the roadblock you might be running in is that's one of those things where people would be terrified of saying something that might put them on the opposite side of that or make them vilify.
So
their
full
response.
disclosure, we want to get real. So a few years ago, I had a little bit of a breakdown, and I ended up, getting some help. They gave me a special set of socks. It was great. And I did post about it on LinkedIn because I'm like, other people feel that way clearly. Otherwise, the numbers wouldn't be what they are.
You got a lot of support on that.
I did. Well, I got a lot of likes and hearts and that sort of thing. But I didn't get any comments.
Yeah.
But anytime I would go to a show, still to this day, years later, people who read that, like I have people who come up to me and now feel comfortable in person and someone in private talking to me about that. Well, there's not a lot of people who have been through that who feel comfortable
talking
just
about
in an
it.
Online comment section because they don't know who's going to see it. They already don't want to feel judged about it.
And they don't want to be viewed as not authentic in their response. I mean, think about when you scroll through Facebook and it's someone's birthday. They even made it so easy where now you don't even have to type out happy birthday. It prompts you, and then you add a cake or a little like confetti, and then they're like, yeah, I remember. No, you didn't. I can tell. I see that same thing when it's your birthday. So, yes, people might be hesitant to type in there because they fear the authenticity of what they're about to put in there being viewed negatively. But not saying if you don't come across those people, they're not going to hold that conversation with you. And it is more of an intimate topic where those people would probably be more comfortable face-to-face sharing. I wouldn't. Being a veteran in that as well, I don't know if I put myself out there. I don't know if I would put that part out there on social media. So that's just one of the comfort zone factors. Yeah.
Well, the other thing, too, that you might want to look at, I don't know what platforms you're on. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that might be the thing is you might.
Not all are created equal.
You might. I would be interested to see what would happen if you, like, for instance, built a private Discord, but then on your other pages, while posting the content you're posting, provided a link to the private Discord.
Yeah, because then they're going to be
people would then
feeling
in
secure.
like a more either anonymous or comfortable type setting where they know it can't just be publicly searched and viewed because it's a page, would be more comfortable talking about that.
Yeah, and the thing is each platform is different. What I'm posting on Instagram versus what I'm posting on TikTok. TikTok is one of those where you really want to hook them in the first 3 seconds. If you don't hook them in the first 3 seconds, you're dead. Instagram's one of those, it's a long game approach. It took me forever to see the engagement I get now. And I'm posting the exact same content. It just, you built up the following. And think of your experience on social media. How many times you see something that's cool, but you're just scrolling. Are you taking the time to like or share or comment? No, you're just like, hey, that's cool, and then you keep scrolling. We live in a day of convenience, and a lot of people find it more convenient just to consume their content and keep scrolling. So you have to really pay attention to the subtle cues that you're getting. If all of a sudden, like one day you got 500 likes, all right, that's a tell. But if you're always getting 500 likes and then all of a sudden one day you get 0, probably didn't sit well with your audience. Or maybe it didn't get distributed out. Maybe it got throttled down because something controversial was in there that triggered the algorithm.
It could have just been a one-off too, but I'm going to make fun of Charles real quick. He's not going to like it. So I remember when Charles was finally like, man, I'm really going to make a push on social media. Yeah, and I was like, oh, cool. And he started posting. I was like, your content's awful. And, it turns out I'm not Charles's audience. That's why I'm on a podcast with him, not watching it. So it was one of those things, though, where, like, I even, like, kind of hated on it. And that's what's going to happen. People are going to hate your content, or they're not going to care about your content. But eventually people will start caring. And they will. If you keep posting, you will find your people. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes you'll have to do it for a couple of years. Like, if you look at the timeline of, like, channels or pages growing, and this is if you're a carrier, if you're trying to be an influencer, or you're just trying to build a network, anything. A lot of times when you look at it, it becomes exponential. Mm-hmm. You hit a point, and it's almost like there's just a point where it feels dead. It feels like you shouldn't even try. Kind of like we stopped doing the podcast because we're like, does this have an effect? And then the next thing you know, so many people were talking about it that we actually ended up getting on a different platform. And then we ended up getting, I think we were averaging at one point.
We built a community that supported us, and that's what you're doing on social media. The podcast is no different. Social media is the same beast. You're building a community of like-minded individuals that appreciate your content and generally want you to reciprocate. I can't tell you how many people I know that post everything on social media but never actually spend time engaging on social media, and all of that stuff matters. If I see someone that's always supporting my content, I'm going to follow their content more closely. I'm probably going to set a reminder so every time their stuff posts, because I want to give back. It's almost like an obligation to try to give my time back to the very people that support us and caused us to land where we're at.
Well, and that kind of circles back to isolationism, right? So, like, drivers, for instance, whether you're a carrier or driver, you know this. Like, you spend a lot of time alone, right? Community is not what it used to be. The CB radio is dead, essentially, which would fix a lot of pileups, but it is what it is. But also you can't be on your phone to communicate. I don't know. Anyway, it's one of those things where the community, like, even just for regular people, everybody's on their phone. Everybody talks and keeps in. You always hear people say, I have Facebook so I can keep in touch with my family. It's like, because they don't actually see or actually talk to their family. People need connection and they don't get it. That's why you have certain platforms where people will literally pay just to be able to talk to somebody. They'll be like, oh, I really like Patreon is a much more family-friendly example. You'll have a YouTuber, you pay extra money, you now get into this platform where you can actually message back and forth directly with that YouTuber. You can create a sense of connection with this person. People are paying to have direct connection to people.
And that's kind of crazy, too, because it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. The number one thing every content creator wants is engagement. I can't tell you how many times we've seen content creators not engage with their engagement. If someone takes the time to leave you a comment, that's what you're looking for. Comment back, even if it's thank you. Comment back. An emoji isn't sufficient, in my opinion. Don't just like the comment. Take time to say thank you.
I think it depends on the emoji.
This is why they took some out of the rotation in social media platforms.
That's true. But yeah, that's the thing is, just give. You have to give to get.
Yeah.
But people want connection, and they want to connect with you because there's a large number of people out there that just want to connect with anybody because everybody wants to feel seen and everybody wants to feel heard. I mean, if you're trying to figure out how to grow your brand, you probably want to be those things too. And so what you do is you can leverage that to do that. But ultimately, beyond just leveraging it, you could do that. That's how you create a fan base. And that turns into a following. And you get like real legit loyal fans that will like stand for you no matter what you do. Like there are people who still like the new Metallica stuff. What?
Yeah.
But they just created a sense of community.
Well, and we see it all the time. We've been growing this for a minute now, and we go places, and at first it was kind of surreal. We go to places, and people are like, hey, let me get a picture. And then you hit the phase where you're like a little annoyed. One of the best things that someone taught me was not to get annoyed, be appreciative of that fact, because there could be a day where no one wants to talk to you. No one wants to shove a camera in your face. No one wants you to sign something. No one wants to accept a mug with your face on it. These are all things that can happen. So appreciate your audience. Show them appreciation for them wanting to talk to you, and share that with them. Yeah.
I post a lot of different aspects of trucking media, driver advocacy, a lot of political, constitutional, all this stuff, right? And the algorithm on TikTok absolutely hates it, but I've learned how to use some AI tools to overcome that. What have you guys experienced working with AI to combat the algorithm for your favor?
I don't necessarily combat it because you get to a certain point, and if it's what you're trying to do, great. If it's not, then probably doesn't apply to you. But I have sponsors. I run a company where I have to service multiple carriers, drivers, and I have a very different line to walk than most carriers. Carriers choose the carrier side. I have to make content that appeals to the drivers, to the carriers, and then is also interesting enough for you to actually give a crap about. So I generally don't pick a side. Anyone that knows Paul or I know actually, Paul and I have differing views
We have
on
sides.
everything.
We
Well,
have sides.
not even sides. Like
Yeah,
we
no.
don't agree on anything. The 9 times out of 10, if you put a topic in front of us, we're taking opposite stances. That's why our
Yeah, I would
shtick
actually
works.
disagree with that.
My point.
So one thing though too, real quick, I hate it that it exists. And I love that the way that you're probably doing it, if it's not working, I'm gonna tell you how to fix it. But I don't want you to do it because I hate it, because that's just what we do now as a people, as a whole. The thing is what you gotta do is when you do pick a side, you can't be in the middle.
Yeah, you have to lean in.
You gotta be, if you're going to be one side, you gotta go. Like, there is no, if you're gonna be centrist, then you need to be completely fact-based, objective, 100%. So if anyone over here looks at it, they're like, yep. Anyone over here looks at it, yep. Now, if you are gonna tilt to a side, like you're not gonna get the people all the way over here. And if this is the side you're on, you're also not gonna get all of these people. So you need to be able to get all of these people or all of these people.
It's
Like, you've already
unfortunate.
cut your audience potential in half. So the only way you can do that is by going so far, maybe not all the way far to where like nobody wants to listen to you because you know.
Well, you ever see?
Right. I don't know. Infowars was a thing, I guess.
You ever see those influencers that are out there
Right,
that
but
have like a specific like niche? Like all they post about is a specific like either band or lifestyle, or maybe it's a driver that's only sharing like when they're complaining about their broker. They're only getting people because those people can relate to that thing. And every time you go to their channel, that's what you're going to see. It's consistency in that. So if that's what you're building, then it's great. We don't get the luxury of doing that because we have to diversify to so many different people that it actually gives us a free reign of content.
Well, and real quick to that, the one last thing I was gonna say though is like if you make it outrageous enough, you'll get that half of the audience back because they'll start hate watching you. The benefit that we have, that's like Alex Jones. Why did he make it so big? It was because like half the people are like, maybe, and half the people are like, oh my God, did you hear what that man said? Right, there you go, man. So you just you gotta hug it.
Yeah,
you gotta hug it.
You gotta grab your
and then you gotta
tinfoil
make
helmet
yourself
and
feel a
just
little
lean in.
loony. But we do have the benefit that we are on opposite sides of some things to an extent. We are both a little bit more towards the middle and can agree on things. Well, one of us is, not me. But the thing is with us, because there's that dynamic and that duality, it counteracts. So we're in the middle. So all the people who like wouldn't like what I had to say about it will like what Charles
The
has
majority
to say
of
about
them.
it. And the reverse is true. Like I have people come back like, you were right about that. I'm like, well, it was a discussion.
And that's what works for us. Outside of the dynamic of us being best friends on there, we have opposing views on a lot of stuff. So when you are able to have his side and my side, we're not alienating one side. Certain ones, we actually do a gimmick on the show where we'll ask a guest for the first time on the show, who do you like more? Who's your favorite host? And
It's not a fair game.
well, it just tells you, you know, how many people relate with me versus you. But there's times I get one of his people on there, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get this by default, and then they kick me in the kneecaps, and like, oh yeah, Paul's my favorite. Or lately, what we've seen is people
It's
start
Josh.
siding with Josh. They take the middle, and they're like, Josh is our favorite because it's always safe to bet on the camera guy.
So, but yeah, that's kind of the deal with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, everyone wants to do that nonsense. I mean, you can, but I would actually advise you differently. I would say, based on what you're doing, you have a cell phone with a camera; it doesn't flip open, right? Okay, cool. You get yourself. Oh, I'm sorry. So you go ahead and get that thing, and you put it on a gimbal or a stand, and you just have a conversation. People are going to see through the quality of your content based on what you're talking about. There's people that have really good produced content. Like, we get compliments all the time on our production value, and that's because I got these two awesome people right here. But outside of that, it's our content. It could be produced really well and have the best, flashiest intros and outros. I can throw them under the truck 100 dozen times. It's not going to matter if the content sucks. I got the privilege of talking to you guys at your booth. I know what you're all about. I'm telling you, people are going to be able to relate to that. And your intended audience, i.e. veterans, are definitely going to be able to relate to that. That's who you're going for. Don't worry about anyone else. Well, it grows and it takes time. Like I said, we trauma bonded over this stuff.
Yeah, we were grinding on
almost
that shit for a
canceled
while.
ourselves just because we had an unreal expectation of how long it takes and what it takes. And then it grew and people responded to it. It takes time. If you're expecting a light switch to be thrown and all of a sudden you're going to be like, you know, Howard Stern, probably not going to be the case, and I'll be the first to tell you that. But if you're expecting, hey, I have this, and maybe we got an email list and we're going to send this out, or maybe we're going to share it across our social media pages and have all the people that work here and work with us share it across, it's going to grow over time. You're going to know what works and what doesn't, and don't do what others do. Pay attention to what they're saying. If they're asking for a specific something, you know, maybe venture down that path. It's new. You can pivot as needed. The worst thing you can do is say, hey, I'm in this box. This is the box I got to stay in. This is the message I want you to hear. It doesn't matter what you want them to hear. You want them to listen. Once they're listening, now you can have the conversation.
Mhm. All right.
Any
What's
other
up?
questions?
Mhm. Mhm.
That is awesome that you feel that way, by the way, because there's a lot of wives that do not feel like it's awesome to be a truck driver's wife. I will tell you that's decided by you. I find it funny, like, I got a son, he's 14 right now. He's at that age where he thinks dad's the coolest thing because dad's got a following, and he has me tag him and stuff, and he thinks it's great. He's like, oh, you're an influencer. And I'm like, that sounds so cliche.
Yeah, my kids are like,
I'm
I want
40,
to be a
my
YouTuber.
guy. If I'm influencing anything, you guys are all screwed. I'm like, we're let go of the wheel drive. No, I'm just sharing my opinion. That's all I'm doing. And if you like it, great. Let's have a conversation. You're going to have to decide as far as monetization, whether you're trying to build the community. For me, I'm going to tell you, if you're a truck driver's wife, you have a community. You just need to tailor your content. They're out there. You guys can trauma bond for days. And if you're a truck driver, hey, let's trauma bond for days. Did that job, and now I hold a microphone. It was great. Let me tell you about it. I learned a lot. I'm third generation from trucking. I've worked every position outside of brokerage. I love the business, but I also understand that it's evolved. Social media is where it's at for giving connectivity while you're out on the road. The fact that you're excited about the job is awesome, and you should definitely communicate that because there's other people that could feel that way. They just need to know how to look at it. So whatever you're doing, you probably want to share that.
And I will say, like, the other thing too is, like, specifically with what you just talked about, I think that's huge because, like, you look at the ratio of, like, divorced Ford truck drivers versus regular people because of that distance, you know, or even veterans. Like, anytime you have a spouse who's going to be gone for potentially long periods of time, and there's a lot of different things you can do to help with that. Like, you were talking about the way your dynamic works and stuff, and I'm sure there's plenty of other people in your situation who would love to share ideas and create. I guess, yes, you should decide. Charles is right, but also I would love to see that as like a supportive.
What was that?
But I would love to see that as a supportive community, which
No.
then you could also monetize. You
Well,
can turn it into a
and there
group,
might be people
like,
that see their spouse every day that are like, hey, we're miserable. I need you to become a truck driver. The trucking companies might want to hire you.
you can get a job where you're gone like 3 weeks at a time, and I only have to see you for a weekend. Hell yeah.
And you get cents per mile.
Speaking of not seeing people for a long time, it'll probably be a while before I see Charles in person. But we are going to get out of here, and it was great. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.